Thank you, Ms. Durham, for meeting with me today.
Of course.
Last week, when I modeled the reading lesson, you mentioned how I modified the activity page or exit ticket. I modified the activity page or exit ticket to reflect the TEAK. The highest leverage TEAK we were teaching that day was 3.6G, which was evaluate and determine key ideas. I used the TEAK and then the know and show chart that we created together in our PLC when we went over our benchmark assessment data, because that was our lowest SE at the time. And then I read through the lesson, the activity page, to create and redesign the exit ticket to ensure that it aligned with the standard and meet the rigor of STAR.
Right.
So based after that, and after I modeled the lesson you observed last week, what do you feel is the biggest gap between your practice and what you saw in the model lesson?
I would say making sure, like how you did, making sure that my exit ticket aligned, because you had to modify it, and I think that was a key point in like making sure that the students were doing exactly like practicing the actual TEAK. So in the book they did have like what they needed, which was good, but I think what you did was more like just on point with what was going to be necessary for them to understand what they were reading. So
Absolutely. And so what impact do you feel that has on student learning?
I think that it just helps them to really be able to understand the strategy that they're using, because like I said, it really aligned. So it was like you're reading and then you're going back and there was a question that was literally about the reading. And so that's what it's going to be on every test that they take. So I think getting that more practice in that area was really important.
Absolutely. STAR is gonna be more of a reader's response and not writing alone in isolation as it has been before.
Right.
So today I want us to look at lesson 10, but specifically at the reading component.
Okay.
Yesterday in our team planning, we created the following learning objective for the reading component, which was students will make a claim using key details and evidence from the text. So we created this learning objective based on the two given TEAKs, which was 3.6G and then 3.12C. And I handed you as well your STAR, our new eligible TEAKs for STAR that we got last week as well in our training. So in that packet is all of the TEAKs that are new and eligible for testing. And both of those TEAKs are in there. And then remember, in your teacher guide at the very bottom, it does give you the TEAK as well. Okay. So given the two TEAKs, by the end of the reading component, what do we want our students to know and be able to do at the end of the lesson?
Based on them finding their key ideas, you need to be able to create an opinion piece about what they read.
Yes. So locating the key ideas to create an opinion, absolutely. The lesson plan asks for students to do a closed reading. So the chapter they're reading that day, it wants them to do a closed reading. However, we knowing your students' needs and based on your M-class data and your MAP data, do you think closed reading will be the best
Probably,
option?
absolutely not.
Okay, so what other ways might you support your students in the closed reading?
I think still having them like do it, independently with the partner, but having multiple like stop and check points and pause points with me, just to make sure that they are staying on task and that they're not like getting overwhelmed with the information. So also just maybe like read this one page, talk about it. Read a paragraph with your partner now, talk about it. And just kind of really breaking it up.
Absolutely. So what I hear you saying is that you're going to partner read, do multiple points to stop, to check for their understanding, make sure they're staying on task, and chunking the text.
Yes.
Perfect. Which are all great strategies to utilize for your class. So let's go then to page 239. And you know that in Amplify, they always give us a check for understanding before the actual exit ticket. So on page 239, looking at our check for understanding, it says if students did not identify opinion, support with reasons, and or conclusion, then pull individual students or small groups to model each part. So how does this set our students up for success?
I think being able to basically just go back and double check with them. So maybe they did understand it, but they just need like more clarification. So like just like an aid really, and just giving them more support. Because we'll be able to tell them, okay, like, well, if this is your opinion, like, where did you find it in the text? Like, let's go back and now let's read maybe again, or chunk up the text and see, well, which one of these sentences, these paragraphs support your reason. So just basically, again, like breaking it down. So I think they can do it, but they just might need a little bit like more push.
Yes. So one way you are going to scaffold and differentiate, like you just said, is you're going to have them chunk the text apart and partner read. But how might you scaffold and differentiate their discussion during this check for understanding?
Well, we could give them sentence stems just to make sure that they have like at least a starter, and I think that'll help with making it all like make sense and tie it in together.
So what sentence stem are you thinking?
If students don't identify an opinion, support with reasons, and their conclusion in paper.
And given that we want them to have text evidence too.
I believe, and then put your opinion based on what they read. And then I think this because the text states in this paragraph, it says blank, blank, blank. And that way it'll be able to, like I said, they can organize where they're putting their reasons.
And I see you have your anchor chart, so that's a perfect way for them to refer back to, and it's in the room where everyone can see. So how could you model your thinking aloud here in the check for understanding to give immediate feedback?
Well, I'll just go ahead and start. I think go ahead and write, like, put my opinion and then put my 3 supporting reasons using the sentence stems and using my anchor chart too, and actually writing it out. This is what you could say, this is what I would say, and also modeling how I'm going back inside of the reader and looking at for those actual reasons.
I love that you said you're going to model looking back in the reader, because that was what we discussed in our PLC after we had our benchmark, was training the students and having them practice looking back in the reader. So you going back and modeling it for them. I'm looking in my reader. I'm not only talking out loud about it, but I'm also writing my thoughts down. Is going to be a very, very powerful impact on the students' learning. So now let's look at our exit ticket, which is 10.1. And it says, would you want Julius Caesar to be the leader of our country? Explain why or why not. So looking at the exit ticket, how will you know if students have mastered this objective?
I think for starters, just being able to say, like, I would want or I would not want. Like, and then because that tells me you understand. And then if they just give one reason, because he's cool, he's a cool guy, or because the text says that he was a writer and he was a fighter, like, and I like that, you know. So I think just that first sentence will let me know, like, okay, like, you know, they're set up pretty good because they were able to go back into the text too and be able to write their answers.
So them stating their opinion and then giving that text evidence, and earlier you said 3 reasons. So here making sure they explain their 3 reasons or 3 supporting evidence from the text.
Or maybe even 2, I think.
2.
Just to break it down.
Yes. Okay. So what possible reasons for text evidence can the students give? So you have your reader, so if you need to look back at your reader, you can, and we can highlight those pieces too. I think on page 234, there's...
aside from being correct, okay, so he was courageous. It says Julius Caesar was a brilliant commander. I think maybe encouraging the kids to also tie in like what they already know, like, do you want a leader that is, you know, that doesn't know anything, right? Like how
pull in their background knowledge.
So I feel like those words like brilliant, courageous, those are like positive adjectives to describe someone. So that could be something that we could say.
Even that second paragraph, Julius Caesar put all his technology to use during one particular siege. I think they're going to be able to understand what the text says by using, like you just said, their background knowledge, because these group of kids are more tech savvy.
Absolutely.
For sure.
And I think that could be like one that students use that's like that really relates to them personally, because I feel like everybody
Mhm.
won't say technology because they're like, they don't care, but that would be a really good one because
Yes.
if it pertains to like them specifically.
Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and generate our exemplar response. So
Okay.
after looking at our pieces of text evidence, let's go ahead and write what our exemplar response would be.
Okay, so I would say, which you want to speak? Ooh, this was good practice.
Okay, so now that we created our exemplar and if we compare them, I have to say, you really stretched your thinking on yours, because you even made an inference in yours, which I think is good because your kids probably will do that. But I liked the text evidence that you included, which was at the end of the text, and it said that he was considered a hero, and that is a great reason why someone might choose for him to be the leader of our country. Also, with our exemplar, I noticed we both stated the opinion.
Right.
We both included at least 2 pieces of text evidence, but I noticed that you had a concluding statement as well.
Yes.
Which that is something I left out, so I'm going to write that on mine to include a concluding statement. Okay, so how does our exemplar align or match the rigor with STAR?
Well, we have to write our own. The kids have to write their own piece. I mean, they're gonna have to be able to take what they read and make it something. So I think being able to know, like, I could use my sentence stems, and hopefully they remember, like,
yes.
let me use a sentence stem. That will like help prompt them to make it easier to write as at least the introduction sentence and like the concluding sentence. But also being able to like go back. I mean, I had to list reasons, so my reasons are going to be in my text. So if I'm not reading, or if I like skipped over some details, I'm not going to be able to even make an inference like that he died a hero, or like he was a brave leader. Like I won't be able to do that because I wouldn't have read properly.
It does, because we know that also too on STAR, they're either going to be asked to write an informational or an argumentative piece.
Yeah.
Here they're doing an argumentative. They're stating their opinion, like you said, and STAR's going to ask them for text evidence. We're asking them for at least 2 pieces of text evidence, and then also a concluding statement restating their opinion.
Yeah.
Okay, so now that we have created our exemplar, what are ways we might differentiate or support students to master this?
I think I would give them a sentence stem for every single, like, for my introduction, my topic introduction sentence, for in addition, maybe like, for example, like give those 2
even like transition words.
Yes, like transition words for each reason. I think that will help, because I mean I was able to kind of do this on the fly, you know, so it wasn't like I didn't use a sentence stem exactly, but I think that'll help, giving them at least a starter point for each one.
Do you think there's any visuals or ways they can organize their writing?
Yeah, I think we could use a graphic organizer, just like with topic and then evidence, or, you know, and have them put like at least 2 boxes or something like that.
Yes, so I absolutely agree, and I have a graphic organizer I can share with you.
Yes, I think this would be perfect.
Yes, and it's exactly what you said. They state their claim and then evidence.
Right, and even 2 pieces.
The graphic organizers are going to support your emergent bilingual students as well. Okay, so what scaffold questions or support could you place in the moment of misunderstanding? So as you're walking around and aggressively monitoring, what are some feedback you think you're already going to have to automatically give?
I think just breaking down the text even more, like, so what did it say that he did here? Do you think that's a good like way to describe a good leader, or do you think that's a bad way? So just giving them like the opportunity to start, you know, have those things moving in their brain and thinking, okay, well, I don't think I would want that in a leader, or yeah, maybe that is something. I'm like, okay, well, if that's something that you want a leader to be for your country, like that, maybe that's something you can put as one of your pieces of evidence. And they just don't, they're like, you know, they read it, but they're like, I don't know what to do with this information.
I hear you say prompting the questions. What about for your non-readers? How might you scaffold or differentiate for them?
I would probably read to them and then ask them to talk back to me. What did you hear me say? As you were listening, What were some things that stood out to you? What did you hear? Or
So
just
building their listening comprehension
and even
rereading.
just like telling them to sum it up, like, because I think that'll even help with giving some examples too.
And something too, just like when we had our dyslexia training this week, you could even put a digital version of the text so they can use their snap and read or their co-writer to listen again to the text and write the text as well, or type the text, because on STAR they are going to be typing. And we could use Canvas. Okay. So it sounds like you have a great plan in place. You're going to be using sentence stems, a graphic organizer, and modeling and rereading to differentiate and support for your students. This lesson I know you're doing tomorrow. So in our next meeting, let's plan to bring the exit tickets for a high, a medium, and a low student so that we can compare